All right, I'm going to talk about something that's just very stupid and insignificant. That being my thoughts on like the Pokemon Presents yesterday. So fun fact, one of my first videos, I think it might have been the first video I uploaded on my other channel. Um, I think it was a reaction to a Pokemon Presents like in 2023. It's private, you can't go watch it because it's not the stuff I want on that channel. I actually kind of care about the quality of that channel. I obviously don't care about the quality of this thing, hence why I'm recording this in like I don't know 120p. So anyway, but yeah, so I don't know. That'd be kind of fun because that's my roots on YouTube is talking about this kind of dumb garbage. That being the doings of my favorite slash least favorite multi-billion-dollar IP. Um, so yeah, the Pokemon Presents yesterday. For those who don't know, that's just like a live stream that the Pokemon Company does every few months, probably like about twice a year. They'll do those, and it's just updates on a bunch of different dumb games. And so I thought I would just do a little talking about it. So yeah, yesterday's was I think solid. I saw some people being pretty mad about it. Um, saying it was like unnecessary, but I don't really know what they were expecting from a middle of July Pokemon Presents. Those aren't typically that big. I'm trying to think. I remember years ago, people got really mad because they didn't announce like a new game or like a new like mainline game. It was like they announced like Pokemon Unite, which ended up being a pretty good mobile game, all things considered. I even say mobile game; it's also on Switch. It's on both. But people were really mad about that because it wasn't the exact like remake they were wanting. So anyway, all said, that there's that precedent where I'm like, okay, they're not going to announce anything new, especially when like they have a full full price $60 release coming out in October. It's like you're not going to announce like anything major until then. Especially because like the way at least this year's like Nintendo Switch schedule is, it's like Nintendo's pretty big on like releases this year, um, and it just for me it makes way more sense for Pokemon if they have something big to announce for Switch Two. They're gonna wait and do that in like uh, February next year because it's the 30th anniversary, and they always do one on like the anniversary. And it's like okay, just if you have something big, if you have which is up next, like it's pretty expected that they're going to release Generation 10, which for those who have jobs and lives, a generation of Pokemon is typically marked by a new original game, kind of in like the mainline traditional series that doesn't do anything weird or funky. Or if it does, it's like okay, like it introduces a whole new region, a whole new set of Pokemon. Whereas typically games that come out in between like generation openers are smaller scale and they're more experimental, or they might be like a remake of some kind. So for example, in Generation 8, the only game we got was the only games we got like were Sword and Shield, which were like the openers, whole new region. So new map and everything, new Pokemon, new characters, blah 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 blah. And then there was a remake, which was Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, a remake of some DS games. People didn't like those very much. I thought they were all right. I mean, it's a little uninspired in the art department, but I think they looked. I think it was fine. It did the job in my opinion. I wasn't expecting anything too crazy. I didn't really want anything massive from that, especially because the next game and the final game of Generation 8 was Pokemon Legends Arceus, which was a very experimental game set in the same region uh, as Diamond and Pearl, but it was like in like the past and very different mechanics, and you explore the overworld in a bunch of different ways. It's kind of like almost like compare like an old Zelda game to like Breath of the Wild. It wasn't the scale or scope of Breath of the Wild, but it was a similar concept, like that similar kind of transition. Anyway, I digress. This generation of Pokemon has been a lot slower, probably for good reason, because in 2022 they released Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and people didn't like those that much because they have a lot of very notable issues in terms of like graphics and frame rates, and they were pretty buggy at launch. And only a few of those things were fixed in patches. They really couldn't do a ton to fix a lot of the overall issues with the game due to some weird programming errors, and just a really strange like dev history. I won't go into it. But there's been some stuff coming out about like they were apparently like building it in a way that just it could not run on Switch One, and I had to scale it back to make it work. And so it's weird. I don't know. I have no clue how the game ended up in the way it did. But because of that, they've been pretty quiet over the past few years. The main team, that is. Probably because they got more time to work on upcoming games, especially because the next big generation game, Generation 10, is expected to come out next year. And with it being the first Pokemon game on a brand new system, the expectations are pretty high. Or maybe that I take that back. I don't know if I would say they're high. I just feel like the standards of what you can get away with, it's changing. It's like you could maybe get by with something like Scarlet and Violet. Like you could barely get by with that. And it's issues when you're on a system that has to like a system that's using like a 2015 tablet chip, but that's not the Switch 2, and you got to do more. It's got to push things a little more. So all that said, it makes sense they've had their time. So I just all that said, just that's like 6 minutes of preamble. I just was like, yeah, they're not going to do anything too crazy. If anything, I was more so looking forward to seeing what they had to say about Pokemon Champions. That's a mobile spinoff. I say mobile, it's like cross-platform. It's like on mobile, it's on Switch. So hey, that's 2 platforms. But yeah, it's on those, and I thought that one's pretty cool because it's basically just a battle simulator. But it's essentially taking the online battle system from the mainline games, so like Sword and Shield, Scarlet and Violet. It's taking that out of those games and like just putting it all in a free-to-play mobile game that you can do all that on a mobile game, and it's really cool. And you can connect it to your like mainline console games and send Pokemon from the console games into this new mobile game. You can send Pokemon from Pokemon Go into this thing. And the idea is that this is going to be a pretty big shift in the way competitive Pokemon is played, because typically the issue has been, there's been about 2 issues. Number one, the scale of Pokemon games, like the scope, is very massive in terms of what the fan base wants, because it's a humongous fan base and you can't really satisfy everyone. And so one of the issues I think that is present in the more recent releases is the fact that they're having to cater to everyone, and that's just not really feasible with a fan base of this size, because you have to have a fully functioning, fully balanced online mode that the majority of players won't even play, but the people who do play it a lot, and they play it very, very like intensely, and it's a tight-knit community. And it's really fun. Like, I think the online in these games, like the strategy is really cool, and it really highlights the design of the battle system in a way that you just don't get in the normal games, because they need to be accessible to children, and you can't make it that hard if you want kids to be able to play it, right? So that's even right there. That's another thing where it's like, oh, the mechanics of this battle system are so good, yet Pokemon appeals to a lot of kids, and in many cases is primarily made for kids. And so the main campaigns have to be really easy to make them accessible to children. And so then there's that whole thing where it's like, oh, like the gamers, the capital G gamers, want something a little more, I guess, complex. And so they've been working on like a sub-series called the Legends series, like the Pokemon Legends games, which are supposed to target more quote-unquote core gamers, with more interesting gameplay decisions, doing stuff a little more experimentally, while also trying to just, balance that out. And honestly, I think the goal long-term with stuff like Champions and Pokemon Legends is to split the fan base, because it is too much to try to cater to everybody into one game, and then that stretches the team really thin, and then you get games that just are, in like subpar in many areas, like Scarlet and Violet. All that said, Pokemon Champions looks really cool. They showed off some more footage of that. We got to know generally how it's going to work, from just a training Pokemon perspective, because it's one thing For those who don't know, typically training Pokemon to be competitive viable is stupidly hard and time consuming, and it's gotten better over the last few years. Specifically, the Nintendo Switch games have made that a lot easier. In fact, that's one thing that Scarlet and Violet did really well is they made it pretty accessible. Still not perfect. There's still the whole thing of you can only get some Pokemon in some games, and so it's if you want to have a completely viable team, you might have to play through, say, Legends Arceus, which is a game with no online mode. It's a completely single player experience, but you might have to get this one Pokemon from Legends Arceus, send it over to Scarlet and Violet, and before you're that's $120. Those are expensive games, and so that in and of itself is a lot of money just if you want this one competitive viable Pokemon, and that's not to say there aren't a bunch of Pokemon that are viable, but some strategies require some Pokemon that just aren't in every game, or aren't accessible in every game. So all that said, I think it's really cool that they're doing a mobile game where you can just unlock Pokemon for free. They even on the website they say you cannot directly I forgot the word. It's you cannot directly purchase the in-game currency required to do all this stuff with training Pokemon. You can't purchase that directly. I'm not sure. I'm a little weirded out by the wording of purchase it directly. We'll see what that means. I don't know. So yeah, that's cool. I'm really excited about that game because I've dabbled in competitive a lot, but I've never really gotten into it. And so this might be my chance to give it a go, and maybe I'll stick with it more. And I really think too, on the topic of accessibility, I'm a big fan of the fact that it is cross-platform with mobile devices, because that means you don't need a Switch to play competitive Pokemon. And I think if they continue to, if they really do support this platform, if it works well, this would be really good, because then to do competitive, you don't need to buy a new game every few years to keep up to date with the meta. You can just play this mobile game. It'll get new Pokemon every once in a while, and I think it's just a much more sustainable way to cater to that fan base. Because competitive Pokemon has been growing a lot lately, and so I think it makes a lot of sense just to give them their own game to do competitive Pokemon battling in, and then that frees up the mainline games to be more focused towards single player experiences. So all that said, Pokemon Champions looks really cool. Really looking forward to that. And then what else was there? There were some mobile game updates that I don't really play much. I do actually really like the way they still support a lot of these mobile games. I think it's pretty respectable, and I don't think outside of maybe Pokemon Unite, they're not really egregious in terms of the way they monetize these. Pokemon Go has its ups and downs, but that's barely a Pokemon game in terms of no one at Nintendo or the Pokemon Company really touches that. It's a whole other team. Who's the studio Niantic Games, or I forget, it might not be Niantic Games. They sold that recently, and so now they're owned by some stupid mobile game company who makes dumb, stupid games with a bunch of microtransactions and crap like that. So that's a little lame. But I don't play Pokemon Go much. But yeah, that game has had some kind of dumb monetization, and Pokemon Unite definitely did too, and that's made by Tencent. So yeah, but I'm hopeful about Pokemon Champions because it is made by I want to say Ilka, who, despite people not liking what they did in Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, they're still not a gross mobile game company. So I have more faith. So we'll see how it goes. And then there's Pokemon Legends ZA, which, kind of to go into that, I mentioned the Legends series. The Pokemon Legends games, this is the second one, are very single-player focused. They're primarily single-player focused. I don't know if they've confirmed anything about multiplayer for Legends ZA, but Legends Arceus had none. But yeah, so they're very in line of what kind of like a Zelda player might enjoy. The first one was very exploration focused and had a really good gameplay loop. And what's shaping up to be is that each game will kind of have its own gameplay loop and its own structure, which I think is really cool. It gives Game Freak a good dumping ground just to use a bunch of their more quirky ideas that wouldn't fit into a core series game that little Timmy picks up at the store. And this is shown just by the fact that it is set in the Kalos region, which was a region from one of the 3DS games. And you can't like they're not doing anything in Kalos. There's no tie-in game. There's nothing going on in the anime, to my knowledge, in Kalos. It's literally just, hey, the developers wanted to use these ideas that they partially had left over from Pokemon X and Y when they were making those, and so they're just like, okay, they need to make a new Legends game, and they think it would be cool to make it in the Kalos region, despite that not being a region where the fans really wanted anything from. And I think that just shows that they like have a vision, because they were not just doing the easy like stuff that the fandom wants, because like the fandom wants a game set in like Unova, which is where like one of the DS games takes place, and they didn't do that, even though that's like, that's easy money. You can very easily please a fan base that way. And from the get-go, people were like expecting a Unova game in this style. And also, say changing the setting up in terms of like the timeline and whatnot. Again, just shows like they very much so are approaching this creatively, and I'm very happy about that. So, anyway, I think that's about all my thoughts. I am one thing. This is relatively minor. I do just hope that I have two just don't really matter. I mean, they do kind of matter, but they're not things I'm like dying for in that game. One of which I really hope they use like gender neutral language for the protagonists, because they're moving towards that. And like Scarlet and Violet, they don't like, you're not, it's not like, oh, are you a boy or a girl? You just pick a character, but it still like picks your pronouns based off that. So I think it'd be cool if they kind of do the Animal Crossing approach and just don't do that. Or if they really wanted to be crazier, they could just like make it a slider you just pick, that'd be crazy. But I would prefer neutral language for the protagonists. And then I would also, on a similar note, I would hope that all of the clothing in the game is like usable by both protagonists, like the masculine one and the feminine one. This is how it worked in Scarlet and Violet, but Scarlet and Violet had like no clothing option, so it didn't really matter that much. But this game has a much more expansive customization. So I don't know what they're doing there, but there's two hopes, and they don't really matter, and that's kind of because I say they don't really matter. They're not like gameplay things. That's because I trust them a lot with the gameplay for a Legends game. This team, like the team that develops these, I have not really been disappointed by. And yeah, they've shown it looks really good. In my opinion, at least, it looks really good. And I'm just excited to play the game when it comes out. Unfortunately, that's not, I guess, I don't know, it's not really a YouTube-friendly sentiment. I've just been like, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm not terribly hyped just because, I don't know. I guess it's because it's like, unlike Legends Arceus, when that was coming out, I was very hyped because I didn't know what that was going to be. But it's like, yeah, I know the Pokemon Legends games will probably continue to be really good, so I'm just looking forward to what they do. So yeah, that's about it. There's 18 minutes. Dang. Okay. Wow. Yeah, 18 minutes of me rambling about Pokemon crap. Nice. So yeah. See you later.